All right, everybody. Welcome to our May edition of our TPE webinar series. My name is Nick Bates, Assistant Director for Thurman Center Networks in the Howard Thurman Center for Common Ground at Boston University. I'm also one of the co-chairs for the Canada Developed Sub Working Group here at the Placement Exchange. Today, we have our featured session, which is Welcome to the On Campus, the virtual edition. And our featured presenter for the day is none other than the Honorable Amber Hurt, who is the Director of Student Engagement and Community Programs at Notre Dame of Maryland University, right there, right off Cold Spring Lane. Um, Amber, today we'll be talking about the virtual on-campus experience from both a professional perspective and from a personal perspective as well. I'll let Amber disclose what that means, but with no further ado, we'll have Amber, then we'll have time for questions at the end of the chat. Keep in mind that this is recorded, so if you are someone who does not want to be on camera, just make sure you keep your cameras off. We will have ways for you to engage us, such as using the chat to ask questions and for comments as well. With that being said, I will turn it over to Amber and welcome Amber to the space.
Hello, everyone. Shout out to another fellow Amber I see in here. Very rarely that I see somebody else with my name in this space we are in. I'm super excited to be here. Like Nick said, I am Amber, aka the Adulting Queen, and I am the Director of Student Engagement and Community Programs. So, welcoming to the on campus. I put this GIF because if you know the song "Welcome to the Party" by Pop Smoke, that's all that kept playing like in my head. And you can think about your on campus as like a party because you have made it to the next steps in what your interview process is. I have gone through TPE, obviously not virtually, so I commend you all a lot for still sticking through and going through this virtual process and navigating all that and adapting to it. But I have gone through the placement exchange when I graduated from graduate school. I think it was a great experience and I really did enjoy it, and I did find a job through the placement exchange, thankfully. So we'll just get started with a little bit about me and background. You know, student affairs people love telling their journey, but I also think that it's important just for like connections and just understanding somebody's experience and from the place that I'm speaking from. So I got my bachelor's degree in psychology from SUNY College at Old Westbury in Long Island, New York. And when I was there, I was an RA, orientation leader in SGA, admissions open houses, homecoming queen, literally everything, which is what led me to get my master's degree in higher education and leadership policy studies from Hofstra University, also located in Long Island. They're right next to each other. I had an assistantship in residence life as an assistant resident director. Again, being involved with NASPA, I've always been involved because I was a NASPA undergraduate fellow, and that helped me to get my two HUI internships, one at PACE, New York City, and the other at Texas A&M Commerce. And then I had an internship in student activities at Nassau Community College. So just in that short period of time from undergrad to grad school, I have done a lot of stuff. This transitions into my professional career. I worked in residence life at Florida International University and then went back to Hofstra for 3.5-ish years at Hofstra and a year and a half at FIU. Now I'm in Maryland at the Notre Dame of Maryland University as the director of student engagement. So again, all that to say that one, I definitely have interviewed, obviously, and I do think that interviews sometimes can be hit or miss depending on the vibe the school's giving you, how you feel about the position, and what's going on with you like that day. Especially now, like there's just so much stuff going on that can contribute to how you show up in an interview. But the most important part is that you do the best that you can and use your network and your resources to show up in the best way that you can. And then lastly, like I said, I'm involved in NASPA and I'm the Region 2 NUF coordinator. NUF is NASPA Undergraduate Fellows Program for students that are interested in higher ed. And then I also have created the Adulting Queen, which is my brand, which kind of stemmed from higher ed, but also it has expanded just to like all things adulting because adulting is ghetto and hard and like we don't like it. I don't recommend it, but we're here. There's nothing else that we can do about it. And so I'm just here trying to help people navigate adulting when that comes to like just budgeting, finances, interviewing, career prep, brunch. I love brunch, traveling, like literally all things that encompass just like you being a human and a person. So in the chat, please drop what you would rate your interview skills on a 1 to 5. And like be honest with yourself. There is no judgment. You are here to learn. We're gonna help you with your interview skills by the end of this process. So what you think that your interview is 3.32, 3.24. Okay. I would say for myself like a 3.5 because, like I said, going back to that, you can be prepared, but like sometimes things just throw you off during the interview, whether that's like the vibe that people are giving, now being virtual, like internet issues. But for the most part, I feel like everybody's like in a good place about it. So that is good. And then the next thing, if you could drop in the chat, what is something that you worry about with the virtual on campus? This is someone said, remembering key things that you want to say or share. That is key, and we will talk about that. You can usually read the room and the people, but with it being virtual, that all disappears. Technology lag, not being able to hear well, losing out on the opportunity to speak to students. Okay. If you think of anything else, feel free to drop it in. And as I'm going along, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. You do not have to wait till the end just for a question. Feel free to put it on there. But all these things are good, and most will definitely be addressed during this. Amber, not seeing the whole picture is a very good one, especially because you're not going to be able to go there. And if you don't mind too, just drop in the chat like what functional areas you're looking into as well, because I will definitely say like residence life versus career center or student activities, even like definitely differs on how you want to approach your virtual on campus. So just drop in the chat your different functional areas. Okay. So to prepare to plan or plan to fail, like somebody said, the connection, you want to make sure you want to test that and your lighting. So even when I got on here, I was like moving my computer around to be like, okay, where do I need to sit so that the lighting is well, and as well as it can be, because in this virtual time, it has been hard if like your house wasn't set up for like basically a production studio. That's really what we've all turned our houses into, with getting ring lights and making sure your lighting is good and that you have the best internet just so that you can do these things. Set up the area that you like for your interview to be in. So when I did mine, because my virtual on campus for Notre Dame, completely virtual, never saw the place, going through the same thing that you all have went through. And I'm also on the other side of hiring people, that we are going through virtual interviews, and that has become extremely hard. But make sure that you set up the area that you want to be in. If you don't have like a plain wall to sit in front of, which is what I did, you can use a Zoom background. But like I said in the next point, don't make it something really busy. I typically use a beach background when I'm on my work computer, but that might not be the best one to put for a interview because it's just very busy and can be distracting. Do a blur, that's an option that Zoom has now, or just something that is a plain. Doing your research on the institution, one, because I feel like your time is very valuable, and so if somebody offers you an on campus that does, or virtual on campus, does not mean you have to take the interview just because you're getting offered one. So research the institution, make sure that you understand like what it is going into it. Granted, once you get there, there's still going to be things that you never would have been able to find out from an interview, whether that was in person or virtual. Like just things always surprise you once you actually get to a place and you're in the job. But doing as much research as you can, so you feel like, okay, this is a place that I would be comfortable going to at the stage that I'm in now. And using your network is really important for that, because if you have networked properly and like you just have people that are at your current institution, at your undergraduate institution, or you've had internships or wherever you've met people, like everybody knows somebody in higher ed, which is like kind of creepy because you don't really want to believe it in the beginning, but everybody really does know somebody that would be able to give you some type of information on what is happening at that school, and like you making the best choice for you to end up where it is that you would like to be. And when you get your schedule, plan your breaks and your lunch, because that time is going to be so vital that it will go by quickly in the day. So mine was, I think, from like 8:30 or 9 to 4 or 5, and I only had the 45-minute break for lunch. So I knew that I had to like make food the day before, because I would not have time in that short period of time to just like decompress, sit, get ready for the next interview. So make sure that you are planning and getting your lunch and everything together for yourself so that you feel good going into it. Setting the mood, light candles. That sounds funny, But I, through my interview, had a stress relief candle lit the entire time because that smell like calms me and helps me like connect to something so that I'm not just sitting there like, oh my God, I'm in an interview. I'm nervous. Like, oh my God, what's going to happen? So lighting candles definitely help. If candles are not your thing, just find something that will kind of like ground you, a scent or even like a spray or whatever it is that you have around you so that you feel the space is like ready for you to conquer this interview. Have water, tea, a piece of candy, or a snack next to you. And I don't say gum because if you have gum, like you're going to constantly be chewing and that's a little awkward. A piece of candy, something that you can just quickly put into your mouth and it will melt away perfectly fine, because you don't want to feel like just because you're on an interview and you're like on that you can't stop to have water, or like if you have to go to the bathroom, just like letting them know, making sure that you feel good throughout the interview, because if you're tired and like burnt out and like don't have energy, that's not going to be showing up as your best self at all. And somebody once, as feedback, told me that like I didn't seem like I had energy, but I mean, on my defense, I didn't because we were in the middle of August and it was RA training, and I woke up at 6 in the morning to go to an on-campus interview. However, even though that sucked for me, I could have definitely done something to kind of like perk up my mood. So keeping those things in mind while you're interviewing. Playing music or something inspirational before the interview. I always play Defying Gravity from Wicked. That is a great song to like hype you up and just make you feel like you can conquer the world. Or Beyonce, love Beyonce. So just something to like hype you up right before it. Like you don't want to do a meeting right before you're supposed to have an interview or something like that. Make sure you're blocking off time, like you're communicating with people that you have an interview, and like you should not be bothered during this time. Putting your phone on do not disturb and turning off the notifications on your computer, because it's very annoying and sometimes distracting when those bings are popping off, or even like you see the notifications coming up and like you want to go read it, but again, like you're in an interview. So just try to eliminate all the distractions around you and things that are out of your control. Like right now, my neighbor is cutting his grass. You can't hear that, but to me, it's very distracting because it's extremely loud. So think about the things you can control and then try to come to terms with there will be things that happen that you can't control, but do your best so that you can have your space together. And if you move your hands while you're talking, have something that you can fidget, or like keep your hands under like your table or something so that you don't feel that your hands are like up here and you're all like flopping them around. That's also very distracting because on Zoom, all you can see is this little box. So moving your hands around like this all the time is going to be like, what's going on? I'm guilty of talking with my hands and I'm doing it under the table. So you all don't know that that's what's going on. And get fully dressed to feel your best. And that can be hard because I don't like wearing work clothes anymore. I wear leggings and like a presentable shirt. It's very difficult now to want to get dressed, but get fully dressed so that you feel like you are your best self, and try to show your personality through your clothes, because again, you only can see from like here up, or if you have like the thing that props your laptop like a little bit higher, but you don't want them to just see like the black shirt. And I mean, if that's how you feel comfortable and that's how you want to show up, you can do that. But for me, like I wore a polka dot dress and like a polka dot headband that matched it because I feel like that gave a little bit more like personality than just wearing a plain shirt, because you can't again see anything except for what's in the box. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Let me just see what other functional areas people had said. Residence life, admissions, res life, student activities, student affairs activities. Okay, perfect, perfect. I'm the person for you then, because I have done both of those things from what everybody's saying, res life and student activities. So killing the interview. So again, if you've already gone through like your first or second round with them and then you're going to the on-campus, that means that they do like you and they are considering you. It's more so seeing like after you talk to more people and they ask you more situational questions or get more in depth with the conversation, seeing if like you are a fit for them as well. So you want to practice with someone. Practicing is like very difficult and nerve wracking, especially if you're doing with people you know, because you're like, oh God, like this is basically like it's another interview, but like you need to do it. That's what helped me so much through interviewing through the placement exchange, and then even still interviewing after I wanted to move up from being a resident director. And the first place that really helped me was when I did apply for a Kuhoi internships and interviewing through that process both years after my senior year of undergrad and my first year in grad school helped so much, because that's what you're doing for a professional job. It just seems a little scarier and more like serious because it's a professional job, but practicing really helps you a lot to get feedback on like what your speed is. Like I'm guilty of talking extremely fast, but I've gotten better at slowing down and making sure that I'm not speeding through things. And when you practice as well, like somebody that knows you can call out like, oh well, you didn't talk about this, or like, why don't you use this example for something else? So just practice, 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 and ask people for help. Like people want to help you because they obviously want you to get a job, but you do need to take the initiative to ask people. Being prepared for the typical questions, you know they're going to ask you, can you tell me about yourself and why are you interested in this position or interested in this school? Saying like, oh, like I just have a passion for student affairs and like I really want to help students. That doesn't cut it because that's a very generic answer. Everybody's getting into here because they want to help students. So you really need to figure out your answer that is your answer and not so generic. Even though that feels like the most natural thing for you to say, like really think about like your qualities, like what's making you different. What have you done that is really going to stand out and have them see that like you should be the person that they pick for the position. Don't write your answers out word for word. I recommend using bullet points. I used to like type out what I would respond to, like, tell me about yourself, or like, tell me about a time you've dealt with a crisis, or tell me about a time that you've created something. And it would be hard because somebody mentioned before, like, you feel like you're forgetting what you wanted to say because you kind of mapped it out in your brain already, like, so perfectly of like, I'm going to say this from A to Z for my diversity thing, and I'm going to say this from A to Z for my mental health situation. But think about bullet points. So if you think crisis, what have you done that was responding to a crisis? So you can say like a mental health incident, a flood, hurricanes, um, power outages, like whatever it is, like making the bullet points of what the situation was and like what happened at it. So your brain doesn't think about it as A to Z, like trying to memorize a story. And do not read off of anything either. Like I actually interviewed somebody for an internship position I have, and I'm pretty sure they were reading off of something, and I could definitely tell because they kept going like down like here looking at stuff and their eyes were going. But at the same time, like you really can't tell what somebody's doing, but it just came out very robotic and like rehearsed. And if you write out the answer completely, you can also run the risk of coming out rehearsed. But think about scenarios also that you can use for multiple questions. Like that's something that working with my past graduate assistants, like she doesn't like interviewing, and she always says she has a hard time with that because she thinks so like programs, I'm only going to talk about stuff that I've done like with RAs, or mental health, like I'm only going to talk about on call things, or like literally any scenario. They just think of that in that one box. Like break out of that, because a lot of your experience is going to be adaptable to talk about in any question that they're asking you. You just have to think farther than the straight out question that they're going to ask, because some questions can be asked in like a confusing way, but it means the same thing. And the easiest thing to think about when you're formulating your answers is the STAR method of situation, task, action, and result. And I say be confident in yourself and your abilities, and use I statements, because again, higher ed, we love the team player, we love working with each other, but this isn't about what your committee did. This is about what you did on that committee and how it led to better results. So you don't want to say like, oh yeah, like my committee, like we held this program and we assessed it this way, and then this was the feedback. You want to say what you specifically did, even though like you saying it, you're talking about what you did. You need to just make it very clear of like, this is what my role was, this is what I did, which is hard, but again, practicing will help you with that. Asking thoughtful questions and tailoring them to the different groups that you're meeting with. You get your schedule ahead of time. I mean, sometimes schools do lag on when they might get it to you, but do your best to look over that and make sure that you have questions for each group depending on what their position is, like what role they have and what the position would be doing with that person. And I usually like asking each group one question that's the same to see if you're getting the same answer. But don't ask like a question you've already asked in a first or second round interview, because that's kind of just like wasting the time that you have, which goes by extremely quickly. And making sure that they are thoughtful and not the like, again, it depends on the vibe and like how much time and what you really want to know. Like this question can be good, but it depends again on the people. Like I liked it when somebody asked us when I was on the side of the interview, or they said, what day of the week would you describe the office as? Again, good question. However, do you have a better question that you could ask, or do you think this group of people would really like give you a substantial answer. So try to steer away from the icebreakery questions. It's more so like read the room and really get the information that you need, especially because you are on line and you have limited time versus like when you're in person, it's all different about like passing by people, or people are willing to take the extra time, but sometimes you really don't have that. So Melissa, you said, what are some of the best interview questions to ask? Let me pull up. Please hold 1 second. I should have pulled this up already. I have all of the questions and stuff that I have asked. Hold on. Oh, oops. Hold on a second. I'm going to make a note and go back to it because I always have a very hard time on my Mac shifting between the screen share and my other stuff because I usually work on my PC, but I will go back at the end for that. But that is a good question. Questions to ask. Okay. Now let me go back. Oh, okay. And then have post-its around your computer and area. So again, when somebody said like they sometimes forget what they want to say or like what their thoughts were, again, don't write out everything that you want to say on this one post-it note, but have like bullets of like diversity. These are the things I've done. Mental health or on call. This is what I've done. Like planning programs. This is what I've done. Impactful committee work, and just put them up again, not being in like a distracting that you're just like, okay, so this post-it note said this, or like this post-it note says this, like just focusing on your glance being at the camera, but putting them around you so you can see them if needed. Okay, Melissa, perfect. I definitely have it on my Google sheet so I can look those up right after for you. And then take notes. It sometimes seems weird, like if you are taking notes. However, like you can't remember everything in this short time that you're with everybody. So take notes on what people are saying. One, this helps you with your thank you emails, but also for any follow-up questions that you have, and just to go back after the interview to reflect. So if you're taking notes, do not feel bad about it, or like you're looking down for that reason. Like it is completely okay. Like again, do what you need to do that will help you your best to get through this interview and to make like an informed decision again after the interview has completed. So if you have a virtual presentation, which in my opinion, I wish we would stop this, but some people have it and they still have virtual presentations. I have done a presentation for on campuses before, which I actually enjoyed it because of the topic, but some of them kind of are a little generic and can be like daunting when you already are finishing school, trying to go through all these interviews, and then you have to add this on top of it. But you definitely want to practice with someone and have another set of eyes on it. Another set of eyes is good because for you, you don't work at this place yet, but you don't want to have anything that could be unclear or just like not easy to follow, especially too depending on what their question is. So seeing somebody else from outside perspective, seeing it would be great for you to make sure that it's clear, everything is going to flow correctly. And like I said, have a clear, non-busy PowerPoint, because if you have a lot of words, I hate PowerPoints with a lot of words, like that just is really hard to follow. Again, you don't want to be reading word for word. Like you just want to have bullet points and then you follow up and like add the additional context that you want to, because that also helps to kind of get your point across that you are knowledgeable and understand and know like what you're talking about versus if you had everything written out on the screen. Testing out transitions, GIFs, audio and video beforehand. Zoom and the internet just has a weird way of not working when you need it to work. So try not to use as many, but if it's necessary for some reason, like use it, but test it once you get on there or try it with another friend, because you don't want it to mess up, especially if that's a crucial part of your PowerPoint. Add a touch of the school into it, but do not go overboard. Like again, typically if you're in person, like people might wear like the shirt that matches or like a bow tie or like a little pin or what are those things called? Nick, you wear them, those little flower things. I forgot what they're called, but any little accent. And since that's again kind of taken away, you want to make sure that you're doing something that is still showing a little personal touch. Lapel pin, yes, yes. I mean, you still definitely could wear those. Depends on your comfort and like your temperature in your house. If you're gonna get hot, all those kinds of things. And while you're presenting, incorporate your personality and make it engaging. We all know like we never liked a boring presentation before, but we definitely don't like one now after we've been on the computers for so long. So make sure that you are being yourself. You're trying not to be like dry or just like rushing through it because you're at an interview. Like, take your time. You have the time for whatever it is that they're giving you. And again, I know all these things are hard. I've been in your side. I've been on the interviewer side, but I promise it's not as scary as you're making it seem, especially when you've gotten to the on campus part. Because again, I'm going to reiterate that they like you if you're on the on campus part. Um, there wouldn't be a reason why they wouldn't ask you. Again, it's more about fit when you get there. And for the technology they can use, you can use Kahoot, Jamboard, word clouds. Depends on if the host asks about this or if they're even using Zoom as a platform, like a Zoom poll. Only reason I didn't list that is because that would be something that's kind of out of your control, and you would need the other people to help you with that. And so for the follow up for your interview, treat yourself. You made it through a full virtual interview, which again is rough. Get something that you like to drink, happy hour, coffee, tea, whatever. Take yourself to dinner, lunch, go out with your friends safely with a mask, whatever it is that it's going to help you decompress. Try not to overanalyze it because you really did the best that you can do. After the interview is done, it is in the school and the good Lord's hands of what's going to happen. Send a non-generic thank you email. Don't feel you have to send your thank you email like immediately after this has concluded. Like, really take your time to just like think about how it went, what you'd want to say, what your notes were that you took, because this is why the notes are important. Like for me, I'll show you some examples of this too after. I would go back, and it just took time, but I would go back and email the groups individually. So like a meeting with the person who would be my supervisor. I met with a group of students. I met with a group of campus partners. I met with the provost, um, some people in like housing, um, and something else. And so I would tailor it based off of what our interview was and like what we spoke about, and then what input they gave me from the questions that I asked them. And that was like my thank you email. I didn't just send it like, oh my God, thanks so much. Like, I'm still very interested in the position. Like, can't wait to hear from you. See ya. Like, it was very intentional. And you don't have to feel like you have to do that for everyone if you also don't feel like you're as interested in the position anymore. So again, it's up to you. This is how you are displaying yourself, but don't go over the top if you don't, you're going to say no, or like you didn't like it. But if it's somewhere you're definitely interested in, like, consider that. And if other questions come up, reach out to your host or the supervisor. If you have a host, like some institutions will give you a person that is for you during the whole entire day. Again, in person, they'd walk you around everywhere, pick you up from everywhere. Virtually, they might just check in with you in between or the before and after the interviews. And after, if you do not get the position, you definitely can ask for feedback. Again, scary, I know, but it only helps you if they're giving like good feedback, or feedback that you are willing to take. You don't have to take all of the feedback that you get, but it is good to ask. Because like I know that like I said, that one institution I mentioned, I asked them for feedback and he was like, oh, like people didn't think you seemed engaged. And when he said that, I was like, yeah, I really wasn't, because it was again the middle of August, but I know it was an interview. But either way, so that was kind of something I took with a grain of salt, that was very situational. I was like, okay, whatever. Then another one, when I was interviewing to move up from resident director positions, talked about like the way I talked about supervision and how professionals versus students is different. And that was good feedback. Like that was something that I could actually use in the following interviews that I would have. So again, using it to your advantage, or you don't have to, but I would recommend definitely that you reach out for feedback for people. And then your final tips is, do not compare yourselves to others. I know that you're in cohorts with people, or just like you have other friends in grad school. It does not matter what somebody else is doing, how many interviews they have, how many interviews they didn't have. If you're going against each other at the same school, it really does not matter at all. Nick and I, we were graduating the same year, and I don't even remember where Nick was going or what was happening. And that's because I was worried about myself and trying to get a job. So do not compare yourselves to others that are going through this process. And I can say that for like some people that were in my cohort, it was really hard because, as I told you in the beginning, I did a lot of stuff and had a lot of experiences to help me get to the place that I was at. And other people didn't have that. So they were just like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I feel like I'm not doing what Amber's doing. And I'm like, you can't do what I'm doing because I'm me and you are not me. So please do not compare yourselves to others. I cannot say it enough because we do get caught up in that, especially in higher ed, when so many people are trying to look for jobs at the same time. Showing up and doing the best you can. What is for you is for you. And like a story with the job that I have now, I actually did not interview for this job. I interviewed for the director of housing and residence life. However, at the end of the interview process, my now supervisor like called and was like, hey, we know we just interviewed you for the director of housing, but we really think that you interviewed really well. Like, we loved you, and we had another position open up, and like, we want to see if you want to take that position. And I was like confused because I was like, I absolutely didn't interview for that position, but like, I'll look over it and I'll see. And I mean, now I am really glad that I had the opportunity and that I took that role, because I mean, I loved res life, but it was getting a little bit much. So I'm very, very glad and fortunate for the opportunity. But again, it was because like I showed up, did the best that I could, and here we are. Use your resources and network. Again, cannot stress this enough, because like everybody knows somebody in higher ed that works somewhere or used to work somewhere or has a student that's there or something. So you don't have to feel like you're doing this alone. Like, just ask people, even if it's on the Facebook groups. Like, don't just go in there like, oh my god, I have an interview for this job at this school, like I want to know this. Like, you can just be like, hey, like, does anybody work here that's willing to answer some questions? Or like, does anybody have any idea about like how the school does this? Like, you can do that on Facebook groups, or just in your personal network. When you are thinking about accepting a job, consider all the factors of the job, like the location, your finances, which your finances is definitely not something that people talk about enough in higher ed, because we know that higher ed, we just don't always get paid well, depending on the institution type, location, all those types of things. But your finances are very important. Like, don't think like, oh my God, I'm getting out of grad school and I just need to take any job I get. No, you don't. You really don't, because you don't want to end up in a situation later that you're like, wow, like I really don't make enough money, or like I wish I didn't do this. So consider your finances a lot when you are considering what role you're going to take. The benefits, like, so some schools you can do tuition remission if you want to go back to school. Do you have to pay for parking? Is the gym free there? Do you get a meal plan? Are you living on campus? Do they give you relocation funds? Are they going to provide you like with a university laptop? Like, what's your office like? Think about all of those things when you are considering whether or not that you want to take a job, and comparing to like the other places that you've interviewed. Something that I forgot to put on here too, that if you get a job offer and somewhere that you're interested in as well hasn't gotten back to you yet, it's okay to reach out to them and be like, hey, I have an offer. I'm interested to see where I'm at in your process, because I want to make like a decision. And then if they get back to you or don't get back to you, again, you make the decision after for yourself. People sometimes feel like they can't do that because like you're the one that needs the job. But again, it's like your search as much as it is theirs. So like, let them know that I have a job offer or whatever. And then if you accept one, tell the other places that you might still have applications, not applications, but other places you might have interviewed with, especially for like an on campus, that you're going to like remove yourself from their position. And then if something goes wrong, because like, I don't want to say wrong as like in a bad way, but like wrong just because internet, power, storms, kids, dogs barking in the back, like animals jumping all over, like those things are things you can control. But if something happens in an interview, do not panic. Just take it and go and roll with it and get to the end. Because on the other side, like the people who are interviewing you, we know we've been through this Zoom situation now for like a year, and it's not new, but there's always something that's happening that is new somehow. So do not panic. It is completely fine. And then again, doing what you need to do to just make sure that you like get yourself to the best place that you can be to show up the best that you can for this interview. So yeah, if you all have any questions, and I'm gonna pull up those two things, the thank you emails to read that for you, and then the typical questions to ask, because I have them again all on my sheet, and I can even just drop them in the chat for you to use. But this is all my contact information, my website, email, LinkedIn, Instagram. Do not hesitate to reach out. Yes, Melissa, I love this. I love the questions. So reaching out for feedback after an interview, just if they email you and or even if they called you, depends on the place, asking for feedback, just be like, okay, like thank you so much for the update. Do you have any feedback that you can provide to me to better like my interviewing and whatever? Again, I mean, I've never had a place that hasn't given feedback. Oh no, I have. Okay. So you can ask them, but think about like if they don't get back to you, whatever you tried. If they do get back to you, like I said, taking it with how you want to take it. Like that one school, I was like, whatever, like that won't necessarily be the case for another interview. The other one, however, it was very valuable. And then I also think that that says more about like the interviewer also than like you and like the process, because the one person that I spoke to actually like we became kind of like I don't want to say friends, but like she became part of my network, and like she was like, I'm genuinely trying to help you. So don't go into it thinking like this is going to be bad. Like it could be something good that comes out of asking for feedback. Nick, I don't know if you have anything to add about the feedback piece. I know we've talked a lot about the
I would
job
just
search.
say keep in mind that folks are trying to navigate HR policies, right?
Yep, that's true too.
So some folks in different institutions may decline to offer feedback because they're trying to navigate not infringing on the hiring process and to come off as biased in the hiring process. And so keep that in mind when you're thinking about, if you're asking for feedback and the institution declines to provide feedback, that could be a potential reason why.
Mm-hmm. And also, like I just finished like the interview process for some interns, and it's not even that some of these people like interviewed poorly or that I could provide feedback. It's more so that I only had one position, and I had to go through things with like a fine tooth comb of like literally checking off boxes on resumes of like, well, they did this, they did this, they did this. This is what the position says. So again, it's not always about that. Like there's something that like you could have done better. It's just not a fit or like they just went with somebody else, which I know you can view that as like, well, they liked another person better. However, like I said, it still comes down to like their experiences, like their references, like how they displayed like their skills and things like that. Which it really does suck to hear that, but I don't think I understood it until I did try to move up from like the resident director to the assistant director or director position, because like Nick and I know like he's helped me with my job search too, even though like we are friends, like we help each other with that stuff. And all my friends, I'm not saying this to like brag or anything, but they're all like, oh no, like you should definitely be a director, you should be this. And I'm like, well, what's going on with the interviews then, people? Like, why are we not getting there? But again, it wasn't always that like it was me, it was just the fit and the institution and like tons of other factors. So questions to ask. So this one, I make Google Sheets for all the schools that I've interviewed with, and I put like questions to ask, and I type them out underneath it. I put who I'm meeting with, and like I'll put the questions for them specifically under it. Questions that people typically ask, like I said, is why that institution, tell me about yourself, crisis, diversity and inclusion work. Sometimes they'll ask like how you are as a supervisor or how you like to be supervised, program planning, RA training, what do you value, like committee work, inclusive environment. So those are the like subjects of the different things that I put on my Google Sheet, and then under it, like I put the bullets of like what I've done or like what I would want to talk about with that. One question that I was asked, which is a good question, but not something you really would know off the top of your head, is working through a policy that you disagree with, and how do you get your students on board to implement that policy, and how do you explain that to students? That was a good question that was asked that I made a note of. And so that's helped me a lot to be organized. And to the point that somebody made again, how do you keep remembering like what you want to say? When you've had enough interviews and you keep like typing it out like this, you do remember. Again, it takes practice. But the questions that I like to ask for this is hall director specific or assistant director for res life specific when you'd be supervising hall directors, but you can tailor it to any population that you would be overseeing in the role. So I say like, what do the hall directors need from someone coming into this position? What's the team dynamic among like if there's a central staff office or like if it's a team of resident directors or coordinators, whatever that is. What are students concerned about? What would be expected in the first 90 days? What are the greatest areas of growth for the department? I'll drop these in the chat. What's something you didn't expect when you started at the institution, but somebody coming in should know? Team dynamic. And a question, I always try to ask a question that's like tailored to a concern that I already know the school has just based off of their website. So I had interviewed at Barnard and their students have very, very high expectations. And I think they might have mentioned that like in my first round interview. Again, this is why taking notes is really important because you can follow up with things that people have said that you're either unclear about or you want more information about. So I had asked, like I said, what type of issues come up with students having such high expectations. So think about something about that institution that could be a specific question for them.
Amber,
Yeah.
can you tell us something significantly different about your in-person on-campus interview versus your virtual on-campus interview? Like, what are some
Yeah.
significant differences or things that you weren't able to do because of it?
Yeah, I definitely think like obviously I didn't see this campus at all ever. But my one of the students did put together a really good virtual thing for me, which I really liked it a lot, and I thought that was unique, especially because I interviewed in May 2020. So that was like right when the pandemic started and nobody knew what was going on. So for them to have adapted that quickly, I thought was really cool. But obviously, not being able to go on campus was significantly different. Breaks also significantly different because like I said, you need to make sure that you're either like telling somebody you have to go to the bathroom, which sounds weird and funny and like you don't want to do it, but like you would need to tell somebody that because in person you're walking from places and then they usually ask you like, hey, like do you have to use the bathroom, like do you want water? They didn't really do that during this because we just went back to back to back on interviews. So make sure that you are taking your breaks for yourself. um Even still just like the walking around and the lack of like being able to like breathe for a second because you're just going back to back to back until my lunch, which was like only 45 minutes, which was not enough time at all for me to like breathe and take a step back. I think also when somebody did mention this, like the just still feeling like you can't necessarily read the room really because everybody's just staring at you. So again, you just have to get over that and like say what you have to say and like get through the interview for yourself because in person you feel people are more engaged because you see their body language, but again you only see this much of a person and some people might not even have their cameras on for whatever reasons too. So that is one main thing for Zoom. Even with just presenting, you have to get over like the needing energy to like thrive, which was something that was hard for me in the beginning of Zoom. Like right now, like only Nick's camera's on and mine is on, but I had to like push through. Like I couldn't come in here and be like, hello everybody, like I know the cameras are off, but like I'm gonna do the best I can. Like, no, I had to still be myself and like put out the presentation. So really try to get over that when you are showing up for Zoom interviews or like online interviews. Even phone, even though I think phone is a little different, I prefer phone interviews because you can still like have your notes out and still see stuff and kind of like not worry about people looking at you. However, the silences can get you on the phone because then you don't know like what's going on that side when everybody's really, really quiet. And then even just like the follow-up, because at the end of the day, usually like you meet with like the person that either be your supervisor, whoever is your host, and you may or may not do that because of timing and because they're still working. And unfortunately with Zoom, we don't see it as like you're busy. You just see it as like, let's keep piling a whole bunch of stuff on. So knowing you might not have enough time to ask all the questions, but that's again why you should email and follow up with people to ask any additional questions and pressing questions. Like don't ask like, I don't really want to say a silly question, but don't ask like where would my office be, or like what does the office space look like? Like that's not really something you need to ask after the interview. But if it's something more like personal or situational for you and like your decision of going to this institution, like definitely follow up and ask, or even ask if you can do like a phone call, because again, phone calls, even though we don't always like those, they are quicker than an email, like because you can get your question across in like the 5-10 minutes and then that be that. But definitely follow up so you can make sure again you're making an informed decision, because you don't have those little in between conversations. You can't walk around the campus and like talk to people or pick up like the school newspaper. That's something that my mentor always said to do. I rarely did it. However, the school newspaper does have a lot of information about like what students don't like and like what they're irritated about and stuff like that. So look that up online if you can find it. Obviously Googling the school. um oh, I actually have my on-campus thing here. So yeah, so I had set out, like I said, everybody I was going to meet with and what the questions were. So I had like HR, I met with them. If you meet with HR, don't think that's like scary or bad. Different institutions do it for different reasons. Like some will be just to go over your benefits. Some are just like a regular kind of interview because HR is involved in the process. And like Nick said, with interviewing, you never know how HR is involved, and sometimes they're very involved and like they're the only people you can communicate with and stuff like that. But if you meet with them, like don't think that's a bad thing or weird. Like sometimes it does happen. I met with the provost, and an important question to ask different partners on campus is like, how do they interact with the position? Because sometimes people in these interviews like you'll never even interact with, they're just like on the search committee. So you do want to know like how do you interact with people that are there on the campus. Asking people what improvements they've seen if you know that they have been there for a long time. So again, going on the website, I can see that the provost has been there for like a very, very long time. So I asked her, what improvements have you seen over the years? With the search committee, asking them like, what are the top 3 priorities coming in? How long was the previous person in the position? Just to see like turnover, because I've had now coming in, I think there's been like 4 or 5 of us hired. So just thinking in mind, like, why were so many people leaving, or like basically why were they leaving? And if it was not a bad reason, but like, is it something that isn't an issue really for you coming into the position? Yeah, I think the rest of them are pretty much what I've already said. Students, those, when you meet with students, again, that's the one I get most nervous about, because students will tell you any and everything that you want to know and don't want to know. And then they are very like judging, because obviously they have been there and they know like what the past person was doing. They know what they like and don't like, but try not to get intimidated by the students. Remember, they are just students, but asking them really important questions and really showing your personality to the students, because I mean, we all were students. We don't want somebody that's not approachable. We don't want somebody that seems like boring. Like, you know what students like, so try to like put the extra pep in the student one, definitely, for sure. I'm gonna lastly just pull up the sample, what was that thing called? The sample thank you email that I sent to read to you all. And then if you all have any other questions, I really hope this was helpful. I know it's scary, but you're going to make it. You're going to get a job. Oh, here we go. Okay, so the one that I sent to, this was a person that I work with now. She's like a campus partner. I just said, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me again about NDMU and the Director of Housing and Residence Life position. I really enjoyed it, and reflecting on my entire interview process, I'm even more excited about the possibility of joining the NDMU team. Seeing you all interact via Zoom, I definitely got the sense of how much you work together on things, promote creativity, and are able to bring your personality and authenticity to work. I'm also glad. Oh yeah, this is like a personal touch again, because she talked about Insecure, the show. So I was like, I'm also glad you're an Insecure fan. I tuned in on Sunday at 10. Let's see what happens this week. We'll finally see the block party. So again, like, that was cute. It was like I paid attention. I was like listening to what you were saying. There was something that like I was able to connect with, versus just the like, hey girl, thanks for interviewing me, like see you later kind of situation. And then for my current supervisor, like she was really good at checking in throughout the day. So I just said, like, I really appreciate that you took the time throughout the day to check on me and provide feedback to me while balancing everything that you have going on. Our conversations about leadership, philosophy, work-life balance, and even our attire, because we had on matching polka dots, seemed to be very closely aligned. It would be an honor to work under your leadership and further develop my professional skill set. And there was like other stuff, but again, that didn't come off as like generic, and that was more thoughtful and intentional throughout the process. So yeah, does anybody else have any other final questions? Any on campuses lined up? Like, what are we doing here? And then Melissa has a final round virtual interview, so that's great. And now you're prepped and ready.
All right, if there are no further questions, I want to thank you to Amber for offering all this wonderful advice about the both in person and virtual on campus interview. And congrats to those who have gotten further interviews and final interviews, whatever that may be. And congrats to those who are still in this and still searching. Remember that your finish line is just that, it's yours. It's not anyone else's. And so try your best to resist the urge to compare yourself to others. Like I always say, you just don't know other people's candidacy. And so try your best to resist that. Other than that, we will see you again next Monday for our roundtable / webinar on negotiating your non-negotiables. And so this one will be about, how to deal with negotiating things such as salary, benefits, etc. Best of luck to all of those as you continue search. And thank you again to Amber Hurt.